If you ever find yourself sitting in a trendy cafe in downtown Chicago, feeling like the only old-timer among a sea of bright young faces glued to their MacBooks, you'll know exactly how I felt that afternoon. The place was all brick walls, Edison bulbs, and vegan pastries, about as far from my comfort zone as you could get. But my granddaughter, excuse me, my daughter, chose it. So there I was, Grandpa Henry, sipping cold black coffee and nervously glancing at my old wristwatch. 2:17. Madison was never late. Something had to be up. Around me, the city's youth buzzed about crypto, travel, and things I barely understood. I tried to look busy with my reading glasses, but the only thing to read was my own anxiety. Suddenly, the tap of expensive heels cut through the low music, and there she was, my beautiful daughter. Auburn hair, perfect nails, that dazzling smile she always wore when she wanted something. She slid into the seat across from me like she owned the block. "Dad!" she beamed, flashing a sparkling diamond. "Guess what? Tyler proposed!" I stood so fast I nearly tipped the table. "Sweetheart, that's wonderful!" I squeezed her hand and, just for a moment, the world felt right. She launched into the details. Tyler had arranged a whole proposal at the Art Institute of Chicago, right by her favorite Monet. Candles, music, the whole 9 yards. I had never met Tyler, but any young man who made my daughter this happy had my cautious approval. "He's in tech, Dad. His startup's really taken off." Before I could ask more, Madison dropped the real news. "We're planning a big wedding, Dad. Lake Michigan skyline, a rooftop reception at the Andante. June 10th. It'll be perfect. Only," her voice softened, "it's expensive. The venue, the band, the catering, it's adding up to almost $50,000. $50,000. That was more than my whole pension for a year." Still, my girl looked at me with those pleading eyes. "Tyler's family is, well, pretty well off. I want everything to be perfect, Dad. You know how much this means to me. If you're a father, you'll understand," I agreed before my brain could catch up to my wallet. I pulled out my checkbook and, with hands steadier than I felt, wrote out the amount. She called me Daddy, for the first time in a decade. "Thank you, Daddy. You have no idea what this means to me." Her happiness, for that moment, was worth every cent. We agreed she'd come by the house in Oak Park that Thursday to celebrate. Maybe she'd want to wear something of her mother's, my late wife, Ellie. I told myself I was the luckiest old guy in the world. 3 days later, Madison's white Tesla rolled up the drive, right on time. She came in brisk, all business. "Hi, Dad, can't stay long, got a Zoom at noon." But I could see she was happy. I sat her down in the living room, handed her the envelope with the check, and gave my little speech about dreams and childhood and how proud her mother would be. She took the envelope, checked the amount without ceremony, and just said, "Thanks, Dad." Maybe kids these days don't go for big moments. Maybe I was just sentimental. I told her how much I looked forward to seeing her walk down the aisle. That's when she looked at me with a strange, unreadable expression. "Actually, Dad, there's something else. You're not invited." At first, I thought I'd misheard. "What?" She said it flat, like she was reading a text message. "You're not invited to the wedding, Dad." I just sat there, gripping the arms of my chair. "Madison, why wouldn't I be at your wedding?" She shrugged. You're not exactly presentable. I can't risk you embarrassing me in front of Tyler's family. They're very proper. I need everything to be perfect. I'm sorry." I sat in stunned silence as she got up, thanked me again for the money, and left. Her Tesla glided away while I was still trying to catch my breath. I was $50,000 poorer, and my own daughter didn't want me at her wedding. Standing in my empty house, I looked at the old family photos on the mantel. Once I'd been her hero. Now I was just someone to hide away. But a little voice inside me, Maybe it was Ellie, maybe it was just stubbornness, started whispering. That's not the end, Henry. Not by a long shot. After Madison left, the silence in my Oak Park house felt different. Heavier. For a long while, I just sat staring at the front door, half expecting her to come back, say it was all a joke, laugh about her silly request. But all I heard was the faint ticking of the mantel clock and the hum of her Tesla disappearing down the street. Her words echoed in my mind. You're not exactly presentable. I looked at my hands, calloused, spotted, still strong, but older than I remembered. My reflection caught in the hallway mirror as I shuffled toward the kitchen. When was the last time I'd really looked at myself? Not the quick glance before brushing my teeth, but really looked. Under the bathroom lights, it was impossible to hide. My hair thinner, gray, unruly. My face, lined, sagging in places. My frame, once solid from decades in construction, now padded by too many late-night snacks and too little movement. There was a time, back in my army days, when I could carry Madison on my shoulders up the steps of the Sears Tower. Those days felt very far away. But as I stood there, something new flickered inside me. Anger, sure, but also pride. I was Henry Thompson. I'd built houses that stood through Chicago winters. I raised a daughter who got a scholarship to Northwestern. I wasn't going to let her shame erase 40 years of hard work. I remembered something Ellie used to say whenever life got rough. You can grumble or you can get up. So I got up. The next morning, I woke early, before the sun, before the city started buzzing. I opened my laptop, dusty, slow, but still chugging along, and Googled personal trainers for men over 60, Chicago. Listings popped up, gyms, home sessions, online programs. One caught my eye, Prime Life Fitness, transform at any age. Their website was full of before and after photos of men my age who looked like they'd turned the clock back 10 years. I called. Prime Life, this is Jake. How can I help? His voice was bright, eager, the kind that makes you feel a bit braver just for trying. My name's Henry. I need a change, a big one. 3 months from now, I want to be unrecognizable. Jake laughed. We love a challenge, Henry. Can you come in today for an assessment? By noon, I was pulling into a parking lot full of shiny SUVs and sports cars. The gym was modern, glass-walled, intimidating. I sat in my old Ford for a few minutes, steeling myself, then walked inside. The place smelled like rubber mats and determination. Jake, my trainer, was younger than my daughter, all muscle and encouragement. He had me step on a scale, measured my waist, took my blood pressure, and wrote everything down. We'll get you where you want to be, he promised. That first workout was brutal, just some walking, light weights, a few stretches. My legs wobbled, my arms shook, and sweat poured down my face. I thought about quitting more than once, but Jake kept pushing. Just one more rep, Henry. You're doing this for you. Back home, muscles aching, I opened another tab, Men's Clothing Stores Chicago. If I was going to transform, I'd need more than sweatpants and flannel shirts. Booked a fitting at Maxwell's downtown for a proper suit. By the end of the week, I'd made a dozen appointments, a haircut with someone who specialized in executive makeovers, a dental cleaning for the first time in years, and even a consult with a nutritionist. Every day, I wrote the same thing on a sticky note, day 1. Show Madison what respect looks like. The next weeks blurred together in a steady routine of sweat, salads, and self-discovery. I learned to make protein shakes. I forced myself onto the treadmill at 6 a.m., walking then jogging, until my knees stopped aching and my lungs burned with a kind of fierce hope. Jake high-fived me when I hit my first 5-pound milestone. See, old-timer? Not so old after all. But it wasn't just about the weight. I started looking at my house differently. Cleaned out Ellie's old garden, threw away boxes of things I'd held onto out of habit. Every piece of clutter I let go made me feel lighter. Sometimes, I caught myself missing Madison, the little girl who'd once begged for piggyback rides and asked for one more bedtime story. But I wasn't doing this for her, not really. I was doing it to remind myself that no one gets to decide my worth but me. One morning, Jake handed me a new routine: weights, cardio, a healthy eating plan, and told me to buy a notebook. Document everything. Track your progress, your meals, your mood. Transformation isn't just physical, Henry. It's mental. So I started writing. Each page filled up with numbers, meals, even the little victories: first push up, first mile walked without stopping, first time I looked in the mirror and saw something worth fighting for. The days grew warmer. Chicago's trees bloomed, the lake sparkled. With every passing week, my shoulders squared, my step lightened. I was becoming someone new, not for a wedding, but for myself. And in the background, always the thought: come June, Madison won't even recognize the man she called not presentable. And maybe, just maybe, I won't either. Transformation, it turns out, isn't just measured in pounds lost or shirts that finally button without a struggle. It's about the things you reclaim: your pride, your energy, your place in the world. By mid-April, I'd already lost 15 pounds, swapped nightly frozen dinners for grilled chicken and broccoli, and learned the difference between a deadlift and a squat, and why both would leave my legs screaming for days. Mornings began with the ache of muscles rediscovering their purpose. My walks along the tree-lined streets of Oak Park got longer. Sometimes, I'd end up at the Riverside Park, sitting on a weathered bench with a thermos of black coffee. The old men playing chess would wave, and I realized I was less out of breath now, less of a spectator, more of a participant in my own life. One breezy afternoon, just as the dogwoods began to bloom, I spotted a familiar figure on the trail. Sam Mitchell, my neighbor from across the way, and a friend from my days at the steel plant. Still broad-shouldered, Sam walked with the same determined stride I remembered from our union protests years ago. "Henry Thompson! Haven't seen you around the block in months," he called out, clapping me on the back. "Trying to get back into fighting shape, Sam," I said, a little self-consciously. He grinned. "Hell, you look 10 years younger already. Everything okay?" We sat, and for the first time since Madison's announcement, I told someone the truth. About the money, the wedding, the words that had stung more than I wanted to admit. Sam listened, frowning deeper with every detail. "Kids can be cruel," he said quietly, "especially when they're chasing someone else's dream. But I'll tell you something, Henry. When my boy cut me out after his mother died, I spent years blaming myself. Truth is, sometimes they have to learn what respect means the hard way." His words stuck with me. I started seeing old friends more often, folks from church, buddies from the VFW hall, even Mrs. O'Brien next door, who brought me blueberry muffins after hearing I'd given up sweets. Community matters, Ellie always said, and for the first time in a long while, I let people in. But the work never stopped. Jake pushed me harder every week, moving from walking to jogging, from light dumbbells to real weight training. He'd bark out encouragements while I sweated through planks and lunges. "You're not just changing your body, Henry. You're changing your story." There were days when I wanted to quit. Nights when my knees throbbed or when I stared at the phone, tempted to call Madison and beg for some scrap of reconciliation. But pride, and something harder, like dignity, kept me going. By the end of May, my closet looked different. The suit I'd picked out at Maxwell's hung, ready and pressed, next to shirts in bold colors I'd never have dared wear before. The barber at Avenue G gave me a sharp new haircut, short, neat, with just a hint of the gray left as a badge of honor. My dentist fixed a chipped tooth that had embarrassed me for years. Even the pharmacist at the local CVS noticed. "Mr. Thompson, you've got a spring in your step." It wasn't all sunshine and progress. Some nights, the house felt colder than ever. Ellie's picture on the dresser seemed to watch over me. her soft smile an anchor against the loneliness. I missed my daughter, missed the days when she'd sit on my lap, tracing blueprints while I explained how to build something from nothing. But I kept writing in my notebook, day 47, jogged 2 miles. First time since 1995. Don't forget how far you've come. The days slipped by in a blur of sweat, salads, and new routines. I stopped measuring my worth by Madison's approval, started judging myself by the reflection in the gym's wall mirror, by the extra notch on my belt, by the way my old friends slapped my back and said, "You're looking good, Henry." One Saturday, Sam invited me to his granddaughter's birthday at the community center. I almost said no, worried I'd stick out like an outsider. But instead I went. Kids ran around shrieking, parents chatted over cupcakes, and I found myself telling stories, real stories, about Ellie, about Oak Park back when the trains still ran late at night. People laughed. People listened. That night, for the first time in months, I slept soundly. Maybe I couldn't fix the past with Madison, but I could show the world, and myself, that there was a lot of life left in Grandpa Henry yet. By June, my transformation was impossible to ignore. 40 pounds lighter. Posture straight. Clothes that fit. A face that smiled more often than it frowned. Jake took a progress photo and whistled. "You're not just a new man, Henry. You're an inspiration." But the real test was still ahead. Madison's wedding was on the horizon, her voice a ghost in my memory. "You're not presentable." I looked in the mirror, this time really looked. The man staring back was ready for anything. And I knew, in my bones, that the best was yet to come. By the time summer finally rolled over Chicago, my transformation wasn't just physical. It ran deeper, into how I walked, talked, and even thought about myself. My mornings started with a cold shower and black coffee, followed by a jog along the lakefront or, if it was raining, laps around the old school track near my house. Jake had me doing interval sprints now, mixing bursts of speed with recovery walks, and he timed each session on his phone. "You're a machine, Henry," he'd say, shaking his head as sweat dripped down his temples. And for the first time in decades, I almost believed it. But change isn't just about new muscles or smaller jeans. One day, as I wiped down the treadmill, Jake leaned in with a knowing look. "You ever think about why you're doing this, Henry? I mean, really?" I didn't answer right away. The truth is, what started as revenge, or maybe desperation, had become something quieter, but stronger. I wanted to feel alive. I wanted to look in the mirror and respect the man staring back. I wanted to show Madison, sure, but most of all, I wanted to show myself. That night, I took out the suit from Maxwell's, now perfectly tailored, and laid it across my bed. The fabric was cool under my hands, the charcoal color sharp and dignified. The salesman had insisted on a silk tie, navy with subtle stripes, and Italian leather shoes that felt like luxury itself. I tried everything on and looked at my reflection, a man no one would dare call not presentable. I even took a photo and sent it to Sam, who replied instantly, "Henry, you look like you could run for mayor. Proud of you, pal." 2 weeks before the wedding, an invitation arrived, not from Madison, but from Tyler's parents, addressed formally to Mr. Henry Thompson. I'd been erased from my daughter's day, but the groom's family had insisted I be included as a sign of respect. The irony stung, but I RSVP'd anyway. If Madison wanted to hide me, I'd make myself impossible to ignore. I made final preparations, booked a haircut the day before the event, ordered a box of Ellie's favorite roses for the reception, and called my old friend from the VFW, Ray, to ask if he'd drive with me for support. "You want backup?" Ray joked, but his steady presence meant the world to me. The week of the wedding, the city buzzed with summer heat. My phone lit up with messages from friends, some who knew the story, others who didn't, but all of them wishing me luck. Mrs. O'Brien next door baked me a fresh loaf of bread, saying, "For courage, Henry. You'll do just fine." I set aside the invoice I'd drafted weeks earlier, a gentle, tongue-in-cheek bill for wedding consultation services and emotional labor, payable upon the return of respect. It was a small act of defiance, but it felt right. The night before the wedding, I lay awake, replaying Madison's words over and over. I thought of Ellie, her wisdom echoing in the quiet. "You can't make someone love you, Henry. But you can choose to love yourself." The next morning dawned clear and bright. I dressed with care, starched white shirt, cufflinks that had belonged to my father, and the tailored suit that fit me like armor. My hands didn't shake as I tied my tie. My shoulders were straight, my jaw firm. I checked my reflection, and for the first time in years, I smiled with real pride. Ray picked me up in his old Chevy, the two of us driving through bustling city streets toward the rooftop venue Madison had dreamed of since she was a teenager. The building gleamed in the sunlight, glass and steel against a perfect blue sky. Guests in summer dresses and tailored suits mingled on the terrace, waiters passed champagne, and the skyline stretched behind the flower-draped arch where the ceremony would soon begin. Ray clapped me on the back. "You ready for this, Henry?" I nodded. "I've never been more ready for anything." I moved through the crowd, nodding at familiar faces, neighbors, friends of Madison's from school, even some folks from Tyler's family who greeted me warmly, apparently unaware of the drama that had unfolded behind the scenes. Then I saw Madison, radiant in white lace, her hair swept up and her smile wide as she greeted guests. For a moment, she didn't see me. When she did, the color drained from her face and her smile faltered. Her eyes traveled over me, head to toe, not quite believing the man standing before her was the same dad she'd tried to erase. I gave her a polite nod, nothing more, nothing less. The moment passed, and the wedding coordinator began ushering guests to their seats. I took mine at the back, close enough to see everything but far enough not to be in her way. The ceremony began, music swelling, the city sparkling beyond the glass, Madison and Tyler exchanging vows under the summer sky. And as she said, "I do," I realized something unexpected. I wasn't angry anymore. I was proud of myself, of the man I'd become, and of the journey that brought me here. But the night was still young, and the reception would bring its own surprises. If you've ever walked into a room where you know you're not wanted, you'll understand the cocktail of nerves that hit me as I entered the reception hall. The space was gorgeous: crystal chandeliers, white linens, tables sparkling with silverware and laughter. Outside, the city skyline blazed orange with the late afternoon sun, but inside I felt like a ghost among the living. Tyler's family greeted me with warmth and respect, clearly happy their son's new father-in-law looked the part of a distinguished guest. If they knew anything about Madison's plans to keep me away, they didn't show it. Even Tyler, nervous and flushed, gave me a quick handshake and a "Glad you could make it, Mr. Thompson." I caught glimpses of Madison across the room, her composure perfect for the crowd but her eyes flickering with unease whenever they found me. The jazz band started up, soft and nostalgic, while waiters offered flutes of champagne. I took one, just for show, and made my way to the bar, feeling the gaze of dozens of guests flick past me, then linger. I could almost hear their thoughts. "Who's the silver-haired gentleman? He looks sharp. Must be Madison's father. I thought he wasn't coming." It was a strange kind of satisfaction, watching the narrative shift before my eyes. For months, I'd been ashamed to be hidden, the unpresentable, embarrassment. Now, in a custom suit and standing tall, I belonged in every way. I caught my reflection in the glass behind the bar and barely recognized myself. The lines on my face were still there, but my eyes were bright and clear. I looked strong. I looked worthy. As guests found their seats, I slipped a white envelope onto the gift table. My invoice, addressed to Madison, tucked among the boxes and cards. Just a gentle reminder that the price of respect can never be measured in dollars alone. The MC called for toasts. Tyler's father went first, recounting childhood stories and welcoming Madison to the family. Tyler spoke next, a little shaky but genuine, and earned applause for his devotion. Then the room quieted, and Madison rose, champagne glass in hand, smiling for the cameras. She started with the usual words: gratitude, joy, excitement for the future. She talked about love, about overcoming obstacles, about the importance of family. She didn't look at me. Not once. I wondered if she would even acknowledge my presence at all. And then, as the applause faded, the MC announced, "A very special guest has joined us tonight. Madison's father, Mr. Henry Thompson, is here. Would you like to say a few words, sir?" A hush fell. I stood, feeling every eye in the room settle on me. For a split second, I thought about declining. But this was my moment, not just for Madison, but for myself. I walked to the front, steady as a man half my age. I took the microphone, my voice clear, echoing off marble and glass. "Thank you," I said. "Thank you, everyone, for making this a day to remember. I'll keep it brief. I'm proud of Madison, proud of the woman she's become, proud of the choices she's made, even when they hurt. Life teaches us all hard lessons. The hardest lesson is that respect can't be bought, and love can't be measured by appearances or wallets." I paused, letting the words settle. Madison stared at me, her expression unreadable. "There was a time," I continued, "when I believed that a father's job was to make his child's dreams come true. I did my best. And I still believe, deep down, that every parent wants to be seen, not just as a provider, but as a person worth knowing." A few people nodded. Others leaned forward, hungry for drama. I smiled, feeling the weight lift from my shoulders. I stand here today as a man transformed, not by gyms or diets, but by the determination to reclaim dignity. We all deserve to be treated with respect, no matter how we look or what we earn. That's what real family means. With that, I raised my glass to Madison and Tyler. To new beginnings. And to the courage it takes to change. There was a pause, a beat of stunned silence. Then the room erupted in applause, real applause, not polite, but full-throated and heartfelt. A few people even stood up. I caught sight of Tyler's mother dabbing at her eyes. Madison's cheeks burned red. She tried to smile, but I could see the tremor in her hands. For the first time, she looked at me not with embarrassment, but with something like respect, maybe even regret. I left the microphone, heart pounding, and made my way back to my seat. Ray slapped me on the back. "You did good, Henry. You did real good." The rest of the night passed in a blur of music and conversation. I danced with old friends, traded stories with Tyler's uncles, and even let myself laugh, a deep, honest laugh I hadn't heard in years. For the first time since Ellie's funeral, I felt like myself again. As the reception wound down, Madison found me near the terrace, away from the crowd. Her eyes glistened in the city lights. "Dad, she started, but her voice caught. I held up a hand. "No need, Madison. I'm proud of you. Just promise me one thing. Remember who helped you stand tall. Remember that love is more than appearances." She nodded, unable to speak. I squeezed her hand, then slipped out into the Chicago night, head held high. The city was alive with summer, sirens, music, laughter drifting through the warm breeze. And me, Henry Thompson, not just a father or a guest, but a man who'd earned his own respect. There were 2 more steps to my journey. But for the first time, I was sure of where I was headed. The night air in Chicago always feels different after a storm, fresh, charged, full of possibility. As I stepped out of the reception hall, I felt lighter than I had in years. All the months of pain, sweat, regret, and hope seemed to fade into the background, replaced by a calm pride that radiated from somewhere deep inside me. For the first time since Madison's announcement in that trendy cafe, I was no longer haunted by her rejection. I was simply myself. Ray caught up to me on the sidewalk. That was some speech, Henry. If my daughter ever talks to me like that, I'll call you for backup. I laughed, and together we walked a few blocks in comfortable silence. The city hummed with weekend life, cars honking, late-night laughter, jazz spilling from an open window somewhere above us. Every step I took felt deliberate, purposeful, like each was erasing a little more of the old wounds. Ray left me at the parking lot, his handshake firm. You did something big tonight, my friend. No matter what comes next, don't forget it. I watched his taillights disappear into the river of city traffic, then leaned against my old Ford, breathing in the summer night. Across the street, the lights from the rooftop gardens still glowed, the echo of laughter and music drifting down. Suddenly, footsteps approached. Madison. She traded her gown for a simple blue dress, her hair down, her face bare of wedding day makeup. She looked young, almost like the girl I remembered from so many years ago. We stood in silence for a long moment before she spoke. Dad, I owe you an apology. I didn't realize. I never thought. She stopped, the words choking her. I shook my head gently. You don't have to explain, Madison. You made your choices. I made mine. That's what life is, isn't it? Choosing who you want to be. Her eyes filled with tears. I was so ashamed. Not of you, of myself. I let the pressure, Tyler's family, the expectations. I just wanted everything to be perfect. I thought if I controlled every detail, I'd feel in control of my life. But when I saw you tonight, standing there, I realized I'd been running from myself. Her words were quiet, honest. I reached for her hand, surprised to find it trembling. Madison, I spent years thinking that being a good father meant fixing everything for you. That's not love, it's just control in another disguise. We both made mistakes. But you have a good heart. I saw it in you as a little girl. I saw it again tonight. She nodded, a tear slipping down her cheek. Do you think Mom would be proud of me? I squeezed her hand. She'd be proud of you for trying, for failing, for learning, and for coming back. That's what matters. That's what life is all about. We stood there, surrounded by the city that had shaped our family, both of us quieter, a little older, maybe a little wiser. A long silence passed. Finally, Madison broke it with a soft laugh. I can't believe you left an invoice on the gift table. I grinned. Interest will start accruing next week. She laughed, really laughed, the kind of laughter that shakes the dust off old memories and clears the air between people. For the first time in years, I felt the gulf between us shrink, replaced by something new, respect, understanding, maybe even forgiveness. Eventually, she hugged me, tight and fierce. Thank you, Dad. For everything. For being brave, and for not giving up on yourself, or me. We walked back to our cars. Before getting in, Madison turned, her eyes shining with gratitude. Let's not wait for another wedding to talk. Come over for dinner next week. Tyler and I want you in our lives. Really? I nodded, unable to speak past the lump in my throat. As she drove away, I stood beneath the city lights, savoring the simple peace of being enough, no more, no less. That night, back at home, I found Ellie's photo on the dresser and set it beside my glass of water. Well, darling, I whispered, looks like your stubborn old Henry finally learned how to listen. I slept deeply for the first time in months. No dreams of rejection or shame, just the steady heartbeat of a man who'd walked through fire and found himself on the other side, stronger than ever. The next morning, I woke up before sunrise, pulled on my running shoes, and headed out into the quiet streets. The city was still, the sky beginning to pale in the east. Each step I took was a promise, not just to Madison, but to myself. A promise to keep moving forward, to keep building, to keep living with dignity, purpose, and an open heart. And somewhere in the hush of dawn, I swore I could hear Ellie's laughter carried on the summer wind. Summer passed gently after the wedding. The city settled into its slow rhythm of hot days and cool, golden evenings. My life became its own kind of celebration, routine but rich, quiet but full of meaning. For the first time in years, I felt a sense of wholeness, a peace that didn't depend on anyone's approval. Madison kept her promise. The next week, she called and invited me over for Sunday dinner. I stood on her porch with a basket of Ellie's roses, unsure if I was more nervous or excited. Tyler answered the door with a warm handshake, pulling me into a house full of the scent of fresh bread and laughter. Madison met me in the hall, arms open. "Come in, Dad. Your family. You always were." Over dinner, we shared stories, some new, some old, some about Ellie, who seemed to fill the room with every memory. I watched my daughter and her new husband together, laughing over inside jokes and little mishaps, and felt a soft ache of pride and bittersweet joy. Madison had changed. So had I. We were no longer pretending, no longer hiding behind expectations or wounds that never truly healed. When the meal was over, Madison brought out the envelope I'd left at the wedding, a little wrinkled now, but unopened. She smiled sheepishly. "I never had the courage to look at this until today. Can I?" I nodded, curiosity mixing with embarrassment. She opened the envelope, read the invoice, and shook her head with a wry grin. "Emotional labor and wedding consultation, payable upon return of respect?" "Dad, I think you're overcharging." We both laughed, and the last remnants of anger melted away. "I realized," she said, voice quiet, "that I was running from the things I didn't want to face about myself. I wanted you to be perfect so I didn't have to feel imperfect. But you're right, respect isn't given, it's earned. And love isn't about appearances. It's about showing up, even when it's hard." I looked at her, seeing not the stubborn little girl, or the anxious bride, but a strong young woman who'd learned her own lessons the hard way. "I'm proud of you, Madison. I always was. I just forgot how to say it." She hugged me, and in that embrace, decades of pain seemed to lift. I felt Ellie with us somehow, her gentle wisdom wrapped around our broken places. Life moved on, as it always does. I kept my routines: early morning runs, chess in the park, lunches with Sam and Ray. Madison called every week, sometimes just to chat, sometimes to ask advice about things she never used to mention. Tyler started inviting me to ball games. Holidays became bright again, full of laughter and noise and family. There were days I missed Ellie so sharply it took my breath away, but now, instead of sinking into loneliness, I planted more roses, cleaned her garden, and told her stories to Madison and Tyler. The ache never fully faded, but it changed, became a kind of gratitude for the years we had. Sometimes I'd catch my reflection in a shop window and almost not recognize myself. Not just the slimmer figure or straighter posture, but the smile. A man who had learned that dignity isn't given by others, but built day by day, choice by choice. I started volunteering at a local youth center, teaching teenagers how to build things with their hands: birdhouses, benches, even a simple table. They called me Coach Hank, and their questions made me realize how much I still had to give. One afternoon, a young girl named Emma asked, "Coach, what's the most important thing you ever built?" I thought of all the houses, all the blueprints and foundations and roof lines. I thought of Madison, of the long road to forgiveness, of every hard-won lesson. "The most important thing?" I said, smiling. "Respect. For yourself, for your family, for anyone whose path you cross. Everything else can fall apart, but if you build that, it stands." She nodded, not fully understanding, but filing it away for another day. On the anniversary of Ellie's passing, Madison and Tyler joined me at her gravesite. We brought yellow roses and stood quietly, arms linked, letting the breeze and sunlight carry our thoughts. Madison leaned her head on my shoulder and whispered, "Thank you, Dad, for coming back. For fighting for us. For fighting for yourself." We left the cemetery together, a family again, battered by storms, but still standing. That night, as I sat on my porch under the city stars, I realized the story wasn't really about a wedding, or a transformation, or even forgiveness. It was about hope, about learning that it's never too late to become the person you were meant to be. That dignity, like love, is built one choice at a time. I looked up, raised my glass to the night sky, and whispered, "Here's to new beginnings, old memories, and the courage to start again." Somewhere, I swear, I could hear Ellie laughing in the wind. And I knew, whatever came next, I was ready.